Yeah.
Back row back, just right here.
Look, that's the
At least you
technology
guys are ready for
table.
Laura to be looking at you.
They put technology in the corner like
They
maybe.
help me signals that.
I'm not because I still, like, every time we do something, I look at Laura, I'm like.
Are we good?
We're gonna put this out the way.
Can we get
You can sit wherever.
Wherever.
Not for the camera. Don't worry. For the camera.
We can get little fans that just hold up. Yeah.
I got back up with her and they were upset I didn't get them. Now Phil, quite.
Our party is filling up now. No, that's only if you have a budget concern.
I know.
Nobody wants to sit right there. Well, they don't get the back row. Hey, how's it going? You wanna be a brave soul and sit in the what's that? I just think they're afraid of the back of their head. Just to let you know, if you sit way over there, you won't be on camera.
I'll sit way over there.
No, okay. Okay. I shouldn't tell you.
Okay, the time is now 6 o'clock. Can I ask you to please close the door?
with me, please. Lord, thank you for this opportunity that we have to come together and represent the citizens of Talbot County on this Board of Education. During these budget hearings, Lord, and all the things that will transpire tonight, we ask for your ultimate wisdom, that shine through in everything that we do. Lord, we again thank you for the privilege and the honor to serve the students and the people of Talbot County. And we ask that you continue to bless the school system and everybody involved in it. We ask all this in your son's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, board members, at this time, I hope you have received tonight's agenda in your board packet, so can I please get a motion to approve tonight's agenda? I make a motion. Second,
Second.
are there any discussions about anything on the agenda for tonight? No? Okay, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda, please raise your right hand. Okay, agenda has been approved, and I will turn things over to Superintendent Wood.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. Board members, at this time, I would like to ask Ms. McNider to come forward. Ms. McNider is going to briefly go over some things with the Cognita accreditation process.
Good evening. So thanks for having me, and you guys know that, just about 6 or 8 weeks ago, we did receive word that our district had received accreditation, and so we just wanted to take a moment to highlight, we, have received our certificates. You guys know how important this is and what a huge accomplishment is for our district, and so up here, you will see each school represented by, certificates, and each principal will receive these certificates tomorrow, and those will be displayed in their front offices, and they will also receive, a display to highlight our mission and our vision for the district, and that will be displayed in our front offices as well. So you guys know how important this is, and it helps keep our district focused. You know, the backbone of our accreditation is our strategic plan, which has been highlighted many times, and we keep that at the forefront of everything that we do each and every day. So congratulations on behalf of, the central office staff that supported the schools as they move through the accreditation process. So the district, certificates, display over there, and so we will congratulate all of our principals tomorrow at their principals meeting. So that's it.
Congratulations.
Thank
Ms.
you.
McNider. Board members, it goes without saying, that the accreditation process is obviously very, detailed, very taxing, and, again, to echo what Ms. McNider was saying, I commend the board for working with us on that process, and central office and principals and stakeholders across the community, helping us, do so well in that process. So again, very proud of the district, and, we all look forward to keep improving. The next item on the agenda, board members, people in attendance, all of our board members reached level 1 in the School Board Academy. All our board members also completed the whole board training and orientations to meet the requirements of the School Board Governance Improvement Act. I would like to thank them for their hard work and time that it took to complete all these things in less than 9 months. It is a lot of training, and we kind of joked about it some, Mr. Crocker and myself, but it is a lot of training, and I appreciate you guys, all that you're doing. We do have some certificates that I would like to present to the board members, as well as an additional recognition from the Alabama Association of School Boards. So, board members, at this time, I'm going to go over here on the side. I'll call your name, and come up and receive your certificate. And if you don't mind, we'll get a good picture of everybody. I'm sorry. Yeah, forgot about my false mark there. All right. All right. First up, Ms. Crockett, you can come on up. We can give them a hand. All right, next one, Mr. Billy Holland. Congratulations. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next, Ms. Bishop. All right, next up, Ms. James Jackson. And finally, Mr. Brooks. that our board members attended a local, Alabama Association of School Board meeting the other night. The school board also wanted to recognize their great achievements, so I would like to present this as well to the board. Middle District, if you want to hold it up here. And, if you'll join me, let's give them one more big round of applause. In, out, hey, I'm whatever you want.
Perfect. Congratulations, guys, I'm very proud of y'all. There was a lot of pizza eaten during all these nights, so, good job.
All right, next item on the agenda, we all know that in Alabama, especially in August, it is very hot. And obviously, part of my job as superintendent is always to review what we're doing and try to find other avenues for improvement. Mr. Messick and I have been meeting repeatedly throughout the year on trying to improve the start of school. And I'll say this too as well. Our bus drivers, our mechanics, everybody in our transportation department goes above and beyond trying to make sure our kids have what they need. Mr. Messick and I have been meeting on the possibility of air conditioners on buses. I asked Mr. Messick to research this issue or research the cost, research all the information that it would take for us to possibly move forward with that. Mr. Messick, if you don't mind, I'll have you go ahead and present that to everyone in attendance.
Good evening. We did reach out to some of our vendors to give us an analysis of what it would cost to put AC on some of our buses that do not have AC. We currently have 139 buses in the fleet that do not have compressed air. Only 24 of our special needs buses currently have AC. The breakdowns by year of the buses in the fleet, you can see what it would cost. The average cost is going to be about $11,500 per bus.
Is that a retrofit or is that?
That would be retrofit. Yeah, that would be retrofit, and that would be the dealer cost. The dealer would actually install that. It wouldn't be done, at our local bus shop. The total cost for all 139 buses is estimated at $1,645,275. The timeline to do that would be about, if they did 4 buses per week, would be about 35 weeks, so 8.5 to 9 months would be the time frame. If we were to do that, we would also need to look at adding 2 full-time certified, AC certified mechanics. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics for Alabama, that salary range for those mechanics would be $54,000 per year, or right at $26 per hour. We would also need to purchase refrigerant installation and recovery machines. 2 type machines. The R134A would be for our older existing buses that actually have the 134 type A Freon. The new buses would have the new Freon type, which would be the R1234YF Freon. So total expenses would actually come to $1,763,649.66. If we were to decide to go ahead and proceed with this adventure. Also, to give you a little bit of insight, the 2024 price for a non-AC bus is $123,495. If we were to purchase that same bus with air conditioning, would be $131,254. So the difference would be $7,759. If you look at our last bus purchase of 36 buses, that would cost us an additional $279,324 for the buses. Does anyone have any questions?
How many school systems have air-conditioned buses?
I would say, Billy, you can probably help with this.
I've got it on there. As far as specifications say all of the special needs buses, and so everybody's gonna have sped buses. As far as, you know, throughout, I think we're like at, on a regular fleet, 25 to 30%. I can get the exact totals, but
I was saying it's less than 40%.
you know, with
Let's say 40% statewide,
Statewide, yeah.
air conditioning.
And one thing I would say, Mr. Whitfield, we might wanna talk to our legislators about is fleet renewal is kind of what pays for buses, and you're looking at about, depending on the year, you're, after 10 years, between 75 and 85,000, is these buses, like if you're looking at 131 for an AC bus, then instead of going 10 years, maybe we have an option that starting at 10 years, you could buy, but if you wanted to wait 13 years or 14 years and be able to keep that money, maybe that gives some more options for school systems. It's not gonna cost the state any more money if our mechanics are able to keep the buses up, and we, instead of buying a bus at 10 years and owing 50,000 out of local funds, maybe we stretch that further, just.
And to give a little bit more perspective also, on the buses that are in red, checking with, some vendors for wholesale pricing, if we were to do this, and what would that bus be worth after we did that? The average, bid price for, for the 11 buses that are 2007 to 2009 is only about $9,000. So we may wanna look at doing something different, for those buses, rather than trying to retrofit those 11 buses.
Good information, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Messer.
Thank you.
Can we get a copy?
Sure.
I just attach it to your assembly, you can, I just, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Messer. Board members, I know you agree, part of what we're trying to do is, let's look
So
at.
if, on those mechanic salaries, the 54, that's not counting like benefit, we would still locally have to pay all of that. What, I know just offhand, what would
You
that
can
cost?
add about, 20,000 to that for benefits,
Okay. And so that'd be a per year.
that'd be per year, so about 74,000 per person that we wouldn't get fleet funded for, because that's not part of the transportation matrix.
Gotcha, thank you.
And, Mr. Allen, if I will, I'll interject as well. When Mr. Messick and I were meeting on this presentation, we felt like we would need at least 2 air conditioner, people additional because of the issues that we're trying to work through on the maintenance side as well. We're fighting a lot of that same issue on the maintenance side, so, we felt like 2 guys or 2 individuals would help us on that, to be able to keep them going. So, thank you again, Mr. Messick.
I know Ms. Pope probably will answer this question, but if we wanted to buy this today, would we have that sort of money laying around to put air conditions on all these buses?
It would be very, very difficult. Now, I'll say that we are looking at, as you are aware, there's a few things coming from the state that we're looking at in terms of grants that we could do some of that, but, you know, we're also fighting the issues of what is the best allocation or best way to use those funds. So if you're asking, would I feel comfortable spending that out of the general fund right now, I would say, no, ma'am, I do not. But again, I think this is a good starting point on the information, and, you know, we'll hash that stuff out together, and what is the process to possibly do it over the next little while. But again, great information.
I have a very simple question.
Yes, sir.
When you retrofit the bus with AC, does that also blow heat?
But it already has the heat, there's a separate, all buses have heat already.
And the biggest issue with the AC bus is just your maintenance. I mean, y'all can imagine, I mean, what it's sucking in, and again, that's where he's gonna have to add, we would have to add 2 more AC, just because they break, all the time.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Messer. Board members, at this time, I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
All right, board members, based on the recommendation you heard from Superintendent Woodman, can I please get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I second.
Second, right, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor to approve tonight's consent agenda, please raise your right hand. Consent agenda has been approved.
Thank you. board members, I recommend approval of the July 2023 bank and financial statements as presented.
Okay, board members, based off the recommendation from Superintendent Woodfin, can I please get a motion to approve the July 2023 bank and financial statements? Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Poe, do you have anything you would like to say?
We can review it real quick.
Okay.
In your board packet, you all have a snapshot analysis, a local revenue analysis, and the appropriate financial exhibits. At this time of July, we are at, 9 months in our, budget. I had to think, where are we now? Cause I'm already in next year. We're at 9 months in July in our budget, so we should be operating around 83%. As disclosed in your snapshot analysis, total revenues for the month of July were at 93% or 77 million of the total budget. Expenditures were at 82% or 64 million of the total budget. Fund balance ended at July at 40.7 million, and the payroll for the month was 6.6. In your local revenue analysis, you'll notice that the year-to-date collected is 19.3 million. That was at that point, that's 100% of our budget that we had budgeted. July collections, though, were at 1 million. The majority of our local revenues is already allocated between the required state foundation match, the required public school fund match, and our capital bond debt. Any questions about where we are as in the month of July? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poe.
All in favor to approve the, July 2023 bank and financial statements, please raise your right hand. Okay. That's all yours.
All right, board members, I know, that we've been discussing where we are on certain topics that we've been looking at. We're gonna use the presentation to kind of hit a couple of things that you guys have been asking for. I'll just run it from up here. Sometimes it's just simple for me. Okay, the first part of this is our virtual school plan. A couple things we need to make sure everybody understands is the current administrator in charge of our virtual school is also responsible for pre-K as well. She is retiring in December. What I'm presenting to you, not to board members, is that decision there is gonna shape what we're trying to do moving forward. Basically, we gotta look at what we wanna do. Do we wanna continue that position as it is now, or do we wanna try to start on virtual school? As far as the costs of both ways we're doing this, again, we're just trying to be transparent on all our costs and where we're at. The current way we do that with our salary plus benefits of our current staff that helps in the virtual school, and we also pay teachers in our district to be teachers of record to be able to input the grades on the platform. So that total cost is $165,000. We also use Edgenuity. That program costs the district $120,000. So currently, our estimation to run the virtual, I won't say school, but the virtual program that we have right now is approximately $285,000. Now, the $120,000 is not totally allocated toward virtual school. We also use Edgenuity across the district, so that's the cost for the platform. We have studied different virtual schools. We went to Elmore and spent a lot of time there as well. In order for this to grow, obviously, the number you have to get to receive the state funding is 250 students. We currently have approximately 50 in the platform. Because those grades, it really just depends. Do we want to stay like it is now, 3 through 12? Do you want to go K through 12? Is it just a high school deal? We ran the numbers to say, okay, if you're running it like a true virtual school, K through 12, we feel like that you would need 1 to 3 elementary teachers, and I say 1 to 3 is based on enrollment. You know, obviously, if that first year you only have 100 kids and 20 of them are elementary, you don't need 3 teachers for that. So, and it is a virtual school, so some of those class sizes obviously can be a little larger than the traditional class. But we try to project some of this with those long-term goals in mind. 1 to 3 elementary teachers, At the secondary level, you need at least 4 core secondary teachers. Obviously, that's your core classes. You can get away the first couple of years without having an elective teacher. As the program grows, you can add teachers as it is needed. Some districts even have administrators that, you know, do driver's ed and some other components to it. So there's ways around that, but you really need those 4 core teachers in the 7 through 12 setting. As things grow and as that program grows, you're gonna need a counselor as well, because you gotta have somebody there that's gonna know, are they on track to graduate? Are they meeting all the things needed with the state? The whole job of the counselor. Even though it's a virtual school, you still really need a counselor position. I would also recommend a special education teacher, and obviously you gotta have an administrator. We estimated that cost be between $800,000 to $1.1 million, just using each locally funded teacher unit is gonna cost you roughly about $100,000 once you factor in salary and benefits. Obviously, that amount can vary based on years of experience, based on contract length, but again, we were trying to give a good ballpark to kind of in your mind. So just as you're mulling over some of these things, just try to remember, you know, basically a teacher unit, if you're paying it locally, is roughly $100,000. We also added in Edgenuity expense, building expenses. We looked at a lot of different things. I know when Dr. Boyd was here, Mr. Tidmore, the discussion was possibly private kindergarten. I put that on the slide. These are things that, you know, you're gonna need a building to house them, because if you're running a true virtual school, they have to come in for state testing, and as those numbers grow, you've gotta have a way to test them and be secure in your testing. Obviously materials, and then I put it at the bottom as well. You know, the goal is the 250 students. Until you get to 250 students, the local board has to fund whatever you're trying to do. And it's also, as you know, it's gonna be a year delay in terms of the funding. Right now, there's 50 students. And with the dynamics of education, we expect that to grow. But I felt like it was very important for you guys to understand, you know, do we look at keeping a program and hiring this position, because we're gonna work a job description to get you guys for this position as well. If it's a program, you can buy yourself a little time and gradually increase it. If we're wanting to push all in and go, okay, we want to create our own school, the only way we feel comfortable saying a school is you're gonna have to have these supports in place, because if we're a school at that point, we gotta show that we're meeting the needs of everyone. So, questions on virtual school program? Yes.
If it were offered, would there be more than 50 in it now? I mean, if it were the full-blown school, would it attract more students?
I think so. I mean, I know so. Now, could you get to 250? I would doubt it very seriously. I think you're at least 2 years away. It's just my recommendation, and it's also from meeting with people that's been down this road. Most systems that have started a virtual school, it's taken 2 years of local funding, because you gotta show that progression. Now, if we have a local school, we have teachers that are working with these students daily, I think our virtual model would grow, because that's not our model right now. You know, ours are more, our model is more of a facilitator type of model. With a true virtual school model, you know, those teachers are working with the kids remotely and following up on progress, and it's definitely more detailed, so yes, it would grow. But the question just becomes, you know, once you make the decision to go all in on the school, you know, we gotta make sure it's gonna succeed, and to succeed, it's gotta come off of our books financially. And the only way it's gonna come off our books financially is if we get to the 250 model, so that the units will then be paid for by the state.
So they won't even pay for the units, like with your 20-day, 40-day count or whatever?
Well, here's another option, okay? Ms. Pope, if I say this wrong, jump in. We could use units, but the way we're set up right now, if I run a virtual school tomorrow or next year, we're gonna have to pull units from schools and ship them to there. So when I say units, I'm trying to protect the integrity of the units at each school. But yes, we could, in theory, we could do an analysis at each school level and pull one unit from this school, from that school, from that school, and then start it. And it's an option. But obviously, I hate to say robbing Peter to pay Paul, that's what comes to mind.
Don't you think some would move from going to school to virtual school, so it would kind of be a?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you think some of the students would move from going to a physical school to virtual school, so the money would just follow the student? Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, but the fallout is, let's say, 50 15 kids go from, I don't know, school A, and they go to virtual school, well, you're losing a unit now at that school to fund the other. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily impact your overall funding, but you are looking at the structure of the day-to-day of that school as if you're losing a unit or two. Where it gets a little off is, let's say, overall, we pick up 30 kids at the virtual school from all, I'll just use Prattville, from all the schools in town, and each one of them lost 2 or 3. Well, that's not enough from any school to justify the 1 unit, so somebody is gonna lose a unit to take care of those 30 kids. That, you know,
If they're title schools, we can't share the units like that. The title school units must stay at the title school, otherwise you can't utilize the title fund.
and to be clear, our title schools have increased as well, so, you know, it's more of an issue.
Would it be an option of almost like a hybrid look that first year until we get to 250
Yes.
of, you know, I would think if you're running 7 through 12, you know, with those 4 cores, and then in the elementary still do what we're doing now, where it's basically you're paying some teachers that are doing, you know, that base work until, because if we get close to that 250 mark, then we could see, hey, we can hold on 1 more year till we get funding as an independent school. Would that be something?
Yeah, it's definitely an option, you know, it boils down to the financial side, how we're gonna shift and move things around, but it's definitely an option. Again, I don't want y'all to feel like it's gotta be all in one way or the other, but I also believe it's important to always, as bad as it sounds, give you worst case, and for us to fully hit the ground running next year with a full functioning virtual school, we feel like this is probably the worst case scenario in terms of revenue. Now, again, it may solve itself with some fluctuation between schools. I mean, it's a possibility.
Just another, especially that first year, like of trying to get it, and let's say we're looking at more of a hybrid approach of really pushing that secondary to begin with, and we've hired an administrator, a SPED teacher, a counselor. Would those people, again, have the option maybe of helping us at Second Chance or some other areas, or would it, how would that look, or would it?
I'll be honest with you, I'd have to sit down with HR and make sure all the qualifications are okay on that in terms of, can we do that? I don't think it would be a problem, but I would wanna look into that a little more.
Like, just trying to think, you know, I think for a lot of parents, they like, you know, the fit of, we're losing kids because of
Yeah.
the virtual, but then how do we afford it with where we are financially as a school system, and trying to be smart with the money we have, because again, that's the problem with the way the state does it, and we're gonna be a year behind. At a certain point in time, we're gonna have to.
But if a student leaves Otago County to go to another county virtual school, we're losing it altogether.
Correct.
Yes,
If we
correct.
had a virtual school, at
Yep.
least that
Yes.
foundation funding
Yes.
would stay within.
You're maintaining the funds, which is, you know, obviously the argument. You're just dealing with a loss of personnel from school A to help school B.
But you always have personnel for everything,
Yeah.
So do you know, would we do it like Omar County where anybody in the state can pay a fee to attend, or
Yes,
would it
that
just
would be the
Otago?
model, you know, obviously, we
Okay.
could charge our Ottawa County residents that you would look into other
Okay.
districts, yes.
And do you know, may not have heard that they might have had like a wait list at the edge in Elmore County, even how many kids are on that wait list?
I do not, no.
That would be probably pretty helpful.
Right.
Because it could be a good
Absorb the
student.
wait list.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, I know
And
that.
obviously, you can also look at qualifications to enter, especially not in town, but you could look at, requirements for out of district enrollment and all that as well. But again, we just wanted to make sure, you know, I think we all agree that this is a need, but we wanted you guys to know worst case scenario. Now, best case is financially, best case is the model we're doing, you know that cost now. Worst case is this model. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle to begin with a target of trying to get there. But again, after Ms. Poe goes through all the financials and we see everything and we feel like that's something we can go all in on, again, this is worst case scenario. Not financially, and I don't mean that in a negative light. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask this, and it's no way meant to be negative. How can we utilize this, as far far as a tool in our district?
Some districts do have it built in where, I'll use an expulsion, for example. The districts I've talked to, they will uphold the expulsion for half the year, and then they will allow the student to attend virtual school the second half of the year. So the student is off campus for a year, but they're not losing a total year in terms of, academics. Now, the Edge, I'll use that as an example, all their teachers are on 12-month contracts, and that's some of the rationale is if I have a student that I need to catch up over summer, I can, because they're constantly doing things. Now, we did not factor in a 12-month contract in our estimates to you guys, but, that is an option. Again, I think we all agree that if we can figure out how to keep kids academically involved, we're all in favor of that. But there's different ways to model that as well.
And sometimes removing them from that environment that may be too big or too active, giving them that option, it helps keep them
Yes.
enrolled and in school.
Well, and I'll say this as well, I mean, when you look at the data, and that's what, in education, we all pride ourselves on, there's no doubt we're losing kids to online schools, whether that's Connections Academy or the Edge or you name it. So I do think it's advantageous for us as a district to look at how do we keep our people in Ottawa County, because it's such a ripple effect. I mean, if 40 kids withdraw from Ottawa County and they go virtual in Elmore County, well, and realistically speaking, that's 2 teacher units that just left from Ottawa that went to Elmore because, like Mr. Ritchie said, or Dr. Ritchie said, the funding follows the kid. So, there's some issues there that we all know we need to address,
And I had 3 in my senior Sunday school class right across the street.
Yeah.
Are you proposing, and you might have said this, that the pre-K director also do virtual schools, or is that the current setup?
Well, that's the current setup,
Is
and,
that gonna be a cost share, pre-K can pay for partial salary?
that's the way it's set up, and that's why I wanted to present it tonight, because hopefully with discussions from here, this decision drives what we're gonna do with that job description. And when Ms. Holmes retiring in December, the time's quickly approaching us on how we're gonna handle it. Now, I think we can probably do a blended type of position for the first year. Now, if that thing grows, at that point, you're gonna have to split it off again, because I think there's this myth that, a virtual school, there's not a whole lot to it. There is. I mean, they're constantly checking up on their kids. It is a lot. And there's a reason they're on 12-month contracts, because it is nonstop. You're getting emails at 2 o'clock in the morning because that's the model. The kid can do the work at 2 o'clock in the morning, so. But, is that it? All right, in terms of all this, we also wanted to touch on centralized registration. I know we've talked about this a few times. We are gonna speed up the process for this pending, your review and approval. Our technology department, Mr. Thiebaud, Mr. Floyd, Ms. Ray have done a tremendous job, uploading a lot of the documents that we needed. But basically, we're looking at centralized registration because it allows parents across the district to come to one location to register their children or withdraw or, so forth, so on. Right now, there are 2 registrars across the district, and what that means for every other school is, your secretaries are also doing this job on top of trying to track attendance and everything else. So centralized registration would allow parents to have one point of contact. It would allow us to streamline our processes for admitting kids. It would allow us to streamline residency affidavit. The whole enrollment process would run through one location. Excuse me. I would like to have 3 people. Again, I've talked to a lot of our surrounding districts. I spent a lot of time with Chilton County on this discussion as well. They only have 1 person. After talking to the districts, talking to our technology team, I feel like more than likely we would need 3 people to handle this. We would also tweak that a little bit in the job description to allow those 3 to also help our technology department in terms of Power School data, also helping our principals find some of that data, things that they need within Power School. So on the centralized registration workload, obviously you're gonna have crucial parts of the year that once you get those points of the year, I'm not saying there's nothing to do, but I am saying that the positions that are registrars, they do have other duties at schools because of that. That's what we're looking at in terms of this. We would have 3 people that would handle all withdrawals, enrollments. They would also assist our secretaries with some of the day-to-day issues that our secretaries encounter. What we're hoping to do, I know originally we were doing this in a 4-phase deal, and we were hoping to be moving next year. Again, kudos to the technology department and interaction with our principals and secretaries. We feel like we're ready to move on this. What I would like to do is have these positions reviewed, approved in the October board meeting. Pending that approval, we would look to hire those positions in November, and then we would like for those positions to start January 1st. I think that's the only slide. Once they're hired, we will begin the process of educating our parents, because this is going to be a philosophical shift that we have to do across the district. As you know, I've got 5 kids in the district. I'm going to voice the parents. I feel your pain on all the paperwork that we have to do every year. Ms. Floyd again and Ms. Ray, Mr. Thibodeau have done a great job creating the documents that will communicate with Power School. So our teachers, our parents would just be able to log in, do all their paperwork at that time. If we can open that window this year for registration, start March 1st and end April 30th. Now I've had on their end, that's not, hey, we're not taking anybody. This is a window where we're trying to get as many people registered as possible. What we would like to do is a shift in our system. As a principal in the system, our budget meetings where we learn units never happened until 1st or 2nd week of May. And even then it was projection, because sometimes you don't know exactly what you're getting. Ms. Poe and I have met a lot these last few weeks. I really like her idea on these things. It's been a lot of meetings. She feels like we can have these budget meetings in February. And then, because you should have a pretty good idea right now, because the count and your daily attendance, we will have a preliminary budget meeting with them in February, and then we will follow up with that the hard line. This is what you're getting as far as units next year. We would do that first week of May. So in order to do all that, we would need to do the registration during that time period I'm talking about. What that would allow us to do, this will be a shift. Once people are enrolled, they do not re-enroll their kids or redo the paperwork for the most part. We are literally talking about they would do it every year, because not to add to the parents, but as a school and as the administrators, we have a lot of issues when something happens with a kid, the paperwork is not correct in the system, and we have hard times getting to parents. It would ensure that all the parent contacts are accurate, the custodial paperwork, things change daily. Again, we're trying to make the process easier for our parents, but also, I'm gonna be honest with you, make our process easier for our secretaries, because they're struggling. It's a lot going on at the front of every school. This will help us identify students who do not live in the district. It will also help us identify students that may qualify as homeless. And then, excuse me, we all know that beginning of the year, with our current setup, it is very difficult not to have transportation issues the first week. I'm not saying this because Mr. Messick's in here. I'm telling you the truth. Like, the way we are currently set up, okay, the way we've done it for the 18 years I've been in the county, you really don't know the true bus routes until after Labor Day with Ottawa County. If we can start this clock now with the registrations, what that allows us to do then is at the end of April, we can go ahead and start assigning bus numbers in Power School, because again, all that's on the form. It would roll into the form on Power School. So opening day 1 next year, in theory, if we're starting this process so much easier, bus parent contact groups with our new parent square, we've been struggling with that. We're having to create them as we go. This should be worked out where they're ready to roll day 1. Ms. Ray, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You agree with that? Like, feel like it? Okay, so we should be able to, hey, if the bus is running late, these are the minor things that are turning into big problems that we don't have an answer for at the beginning of the year right now with our current setup. On this model, bus is running late first few days of school, they send out a message to that group, hey, I'm running a few minutes late. It's just little things like that that go a long way with our parents. Bus routes, bus assignments will be more accurate before the first day of school. This is a big one. All right, high school principal, I understand the frustration with schedule changes, but there's a couple of variables there. Number one, during the summer, Power School shuts down, you can't do a whole lot in there. That's part of the state stuff. Second thing is, if you're not really starting this process until mid to late summer, in the secondary world, how can I get your schedule right if I'm not getting most of my kids enrolled till July, third week of July, fourth week of July? It just creates a bottleneck. So with this process, if we get everybody in the district to enroll during that window, it will help your secondary schools build their master schedule much earlier. They can start on it earlier. They can hit it and fix their issues with their master schedule a lot quicker in front of the shutdown that occurs, because they have to shut down the system. It will also help get our student schedules more accurate. Now, I'm not gonna say it's gonna cut down on schedule changes. That's the world in secondary, but it should help us be a little more accurate in terms of that process. So maybe, think about Prattville High School. You have 1,800 kids. That's 1,800 schedules. There's a lot of things that we can fix a lot of our internal problems with going this route. Here's a big one. If you talk to any teacher in the district right now, they're gonna tell you this is an Autauga issue. Every teacher has to take the forms that the parents turn in, and then we have to enter all that in Power School. We're preaching, hey, rigor in your classroom, we're doing all this stuff, but they're taking their planning periods and entering into data because on the ground level, the secretary don't have the time to do it because of all this other stuff. With this model, Ms. Floyd, if I say this wrong, jump in, but with this model, these forms tie into Power School. So as they're enrolling their children, these forms check into Power School, so all that work that was on the teacher is now on the system. Did I say that good enough, Ms. Floyd?
It maps great.
There you go. So again, we're trying to fix some of the efficiency issues that we've had, and this is a major component. What's enacted, all withdrawals and enrollments will be handled at the central location. Secretaries don't have to complete this task anymore, and they can focus on their secretarial duties, and we can become more efficient up there. So I know that's a lot, but we want to move forward on this because this is one of the key things that if we're going to fix some of the operational issues we have, this is one of the major components we got to do. So
Where you going house?
Right now, it has to be here from January. If everything goes, I'm about to go over the issue, or not the issue, I'm about to go over the kindergarten where we're at. I hate to keep referring to the kindergarten, but it would be a building that we could house everybody there once we move to the new school. So, that is something that we kicked around. I do think it needs to be big enough to be able to accommodate, because there are gonna be times of the year where there's gonna be a lot of people, Now, again, if we can really do a great job, I'm sure Ms. Thomas will, she's great at all our communication stuff. If we can do a great job of getting our parents to understand, hey, if you do this, you don't have to worry about all this form at the beginning of the year. You don't have to rewrite your kids' names 5 times, The forms will populate a lot of that information, and you just hit child 1, child 2, child 3, child 4. So, any other questions here, or? All right. This is just a timeline. October, we like to post the jobs. November, hire the positions. January, the positions begin, and then again, that window, March 1st, April 30th. All right, I wanted to touch on one more thing that we've been talking about with open enrollment. This rolls into all of these things we're talking about, because if you go back to that timeline we just talked about, if that's our window, that's also got to be the window that if we move forward open enrollment, that has to be the window where people make a choice. And again, I hate to keep referencing Chilton County, but they run a lot of the things we talked about, and I've spoken to Mr. Clements a lot today. He agrees with all the recommendations I'm putting before you. You have to have a hard cutoff, because you can't have kids bouncing left and right. And obviously we have some schools that are going to be limited in terms of how many they can take. I'll get to that in a second, but some things that I believe are important for this. Attendance and prior discipline history should be factored into eligibility in this. I think this is one way we can improve attendance across the district is, hey, we are looking at this as a possibility. Quite frankly, if a kid's not going to school A, or the parents aren't making the kid go to school A, well, it's not right to be able to go to school B. We got to hold people accountable. This program, and we all agree, parents should have the right to send their kids where they want, as much as we can within the district. This program should help with the attendance on that if we're able to move forward. I'm not opposed, once we approve all this, I'm not opposed to do some call outs and make sure everybody understands that if this is something you're looking at for next year, it will be factored in terms of attendance and disciplinary history of, hey, these are components in that. I just touched on the window. It has to be March 1st, April 30th. Now, it also affects the units of what we were talking about with the virtual school. there's a lot of things that we're trying to pull off. And I think we have to pull off most of these to fix a lot of our structural issues. But we have to have some of these hard deadlines, and that's why we kind of agreed on that window. I understand things are gonna pop up, but especially the first year, if we go with this, the first year we gotta hold to that especially hard, because it is gonna dictate where units go. If 40 kids transfer from, I'll use Marbury, since I was principal out there last year. If 40 kids go from Marbury to say Prattville, well, those are units that may have to move. Teaching units may have to move from that school to this other one. That's why we gotta have that budget meeting in February, give them all a heads up, this is what you're projected, and then we gotta follow back up that first week of May after all this is completed. The question did come up, about zones. The zones are still in effect. The zones are for transportation. If a parent participates in open enrollment, then they have to provide transportation wherever they want to go. So, I know that's a lot of information in terms of those three big animals.
So will open enrollment be incorporated somehow into the centralized registration?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And obviously, we would have to create a policy.
Because there's probably not enough slots in some schools to take
Correct.
everybody, so there'd have to be some sort of.
And it will vary, based on each individual school, because we're at different capacities at different schools across the district. And, if the board gives us the blessing to move forward with these things, we will create a policy that will come to you in October to review, then hopefully be approved in November, and then all this rolls into, these are the changes we're making moving into next year. Those are just some of the key points we've been kicking around as a staff of how do we pull this off. And I know these are things we've been talking about for a while, but the time is now. If we're gonna fix all the start of school operational issues, these are all components that we have to look at. Yes, sir.
So on that March 1st, April 30th window, so like if a kid was, say, in private school, and they decide, hey, I've heard about this, it's still that window, so it's.
Well, the enrollment, we would take them regardless, if they were, okay,
But they wouldn't go out of zone.
Yeah, like I live in the Prattville zone, so let's say I'm a parent and I've been attending PCA and I wanna come to Watauga County Schools. If my school was Prattville, if you're outside that April 30th window, you're gonna have to go to Prattville, because all those decisions are already been dictated by the units. Now, I would just tell that parent the following year, here's our process, you're welcome to look at however. And I do think, and I know everybody agrees as well, we all have heard that this is, a possibility at the state level. I think it's very advantageous for us to go ahead and create our own policy and then react based off of what they have to, change. But this is a classic case of, these are three major philosophical shifts that can occur in our district. And I'm not sitting here saying there won't be headaches, I'm not saying there's not gonna be growing pains, but I am saying, I believe these three shifts in terms of our operations makes the opening of school and our operations much more efficient next year. Any other questions here? I'm gonna hit these last couple projects. The wall that we're putting up for theater show choir is 50% completed. Long story short, the hardware's there, they've got everything, we're waiting on the panels to come in, that should be ready to roll. Billingsley, I've got the final inspection tomorrow. It looks great. Mr. McLean and the students, I've heard numerous, I've been out there a few times, they're really excited about that. That's one of those deals, unless you're out there, you didn't really understand why that was such a big deal, is the way that school laid out. Obviously it protects kids a lot better than what it was before. Here's some pictures of the Career Tech new wing. We have not scheduled a ribbon cutting yet because we're waiting on some doors that one of the last things that were messed up, the punch list, they gotta change out some of the roll-up doors. So when they get that finished, we'll schedule a ribbon cutting. But I just want to show you a few pictures of the new wing. This gives you a size of the scale of the welding bays and all that. It's absolutely beautiful. I encourage anybody to go out there and look at it. That's the new wing there. This is another angle to show you. Mr. Jones is very excited about the automotive side and how much more space they have. And just a side note, we were able to work out a partnership with Hyundai, Ms. Rader and several others at the Career Tech Center. Mr. Dunn did a great job partnering with Hyundai, and they brought 3 brand new cars. I don't know if you saw it or not. I'm sure you'll see it in the district spotlight here in a minute. It was absolutely phenomenal. And they'll be able to tear down those cars and work on them. There's 3 different types of engines. And, Hyundai said anybody that runs through that program at the Career Tech Center, apply and they'll hire you. So it's, you know, building bridges for our students. I'll see if I can figure this out. Ms. Ashton may have to help me here. I don't know how to use a mouse on this thing. The kindergarten, I was there today, with another meeting. They're still scheduled, pretty much on track. I'm not gonna lie, the time frame will be cutting it close. That we're still scheduled to be done this summer. But everything's going well. The drone footage I'm about to show you right now, is about 2 weeks old. I was gonna show you some pictures, but I thought it was kind of neat to be able to show you from an aerial view as well. That project's going really well. They're doing a really good job with it. And if we can get it to play, no, you're good. I'm glad you're doing it. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Did make it a little bigger down there on the bottom right. And he'll have another one of these in a couple weeks for me. But a lot of this over here on the right, they've already started putting up a lot of the walls, and a lot of this already has some of the roof and things like that. But again, I thought maybe this would be a good picture to show the scale of what we're trying to do out there. It gives you a little better idea how, you know, all the roads are gonna tie in. The new road we're cutting in here in a minute, you'll see it in a little different perspective. But again, it's going really good. Again, a lot of this looks a lot different already 2 weeks later. They're really doing a great job.
Is that the concrete like tornado safe?
Yes, yes, sir. Remember where you see those, that's the tornado shelter that, you know, is required now for any state building. So yes, that's, a great feature, no doubt. All right, any other questions for me? I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Thomas. Ms. Thomas, it's all you. Yes, ma'am.
I'll stand over here, that way you guys can still see. I get the privilege, every month we kind of got this sort of thing, but to share some good things that have happened in our school district. So I don't get to share about the cars tonight because we're in a month of arrears, but next month, stay tuned, we'll share a little more about that. But that's actually coming to social sometime this week. But even with back to school, the frenzy of a new year and finding new rhythms, there was still a lot of things to highlight. So this is just a small piece of that. I would tell people who are watching in the room tonight or online to follow us on social media to see all the things that we offer. And then just this month, we kicked off our new district download newsletter that goes out through Parent Square, where a lot of this is also housed moving forward. Oh, let's start with that. So we'll kick off August 4th. We held a symposium, which I think Ms. McNider has talked about a little bit, but just, it was the perfect mix of professional development and pep rally at the same time. So it's a little different than how we've done things, but we had a great day. 50 plus prescriptive professional development classes were offered. We had lunch for our entire district employees paid for by community members, which was done in about a week's time. So just, it was a great day to meet Superintendent Woodfin and kind of hear his new mantra, which if you've not heard yet is why not us. So that was where we kicked that off at. So lots of fun to get started for the school year. Mackenzie Walker was a Prattville High School student. She was selected to be a youth exchange scholar. So she is now in Germany. She will spend the year in Germany living with a host family, being immersed in that culture. She is one of 250 students in the nation to have gotten that scholarship to do this. So I think I'm a little jealous that she's living, you know, her German life for the year. But she represents us well as our government at the same time. Of course, back to school was just over 4 weeks ago, so we brought in just shy of 9,000 students and about 1,100 employees to kick off the new school year. It's hard to believe we're about 4 weeks in, but again, back to Mr. Woodfin's mantra of why not us, so that is our rallying cry, and we are all working together under that umbrella. last board meeting, so I won't touch on this very much, but they donated just over $100,000 in robotics kits that we will use throughout the district over the next 2 years. The Prattville Autauga Character Coalition continues their kindness campaign. So for the new school year, they started at Prattville Primary School where they awarded Miss Messick and Tucker Powell character awards. If you've ever been a part of that, it's just a fun morning of just posters of encouragement, a little bit of pep rally on the sidewalk as students walk in the morning. So we're glad to have those community partners. Margaret Middle School was named a 22-23 National Beta School of Merit, and that is, let me get it right so I don't mess it up, for their dedication and commitment to academic excellence. So that's something they have earned, and I think several schools in our district have earned that. They were just the ones that sent us their information, but I think several schools have earned that. We were fortunate to host Governor Ivey in our district earlier this month, so regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, it's nice to host somebody in a seat like that in our district. So she actually came to congratulate our students. So we had the highest percentage of response to her summer reading initiative. So we gathered those students from across the district at Prattville Elementary, and she was able to tell them, you know, thank you for all that you're doing and keep up the good work. So that's always a fun morning. Prattville Baptist Hospital through Eric Morgan, their CEO, and Meg Spires donated just shy of $6,000 to our Autauga County Technology Center. That money covers all of their patient care technician testing for the year. So that is all funded. If you don't see the running theme of community partnerships, that is definitely what we're trying to achieve here, and we wouldn't be where we are without them, so we appreciate that. Okay, so it's been hot. Mr. Whitman talked about that. We've had dozens of individuals and businesses over the last month donating water just to kind of keep our kids hydrated and cooled off, whether it's outside in PE or riding afternoon bus routes. We are very thankful to all of our community partners. And that's a school-led initiative. They've reached out to their own partners, and they have definitely answered the call. And not to be outdone with Governor Ivey's visit, we also hosted our state treasurer, Mr. Young Boozer. State Superintendent Dr. Mackey came both with Governor Ivey and with Mr. Boozer here for this presentation. We were just an educational backdrop for them to kick off some 529 college savings initiatives, but anytime we can host those dignitaries in our district, we appreciate that. Our first graders were such a great audience to help them kick that off. And then I feel like a broken record, but if you're not connecting with us, we wish you would. We have seen significant growth in our social channels, which is what we would like. We'd like to continue to see that grow, as well as Parent Square. So if you're not connected with us, we would encourage you to do so, because there is probably 10 times the number of stories on those channels than what I was able to share tonight. But stay tuned for next month, where there's, I think, even more news ready for September. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
I love seeing all our community partnerships come together, and then that just makes my heart so happy. So thank y'all for all that. I know a lot goes into creating those, those partnerships and maintaining them. So I thank y'all so much. I love that.
All right, board members, at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Poe to come up to begin our budget hearing.
Don't go to sleep yet. Never. Well, I'm fortunate enough to present my first budget hearing for Autauga County as the CFO. For those that are viewing, the PowerPoint slide will be loaded on our website tomorrow, but all of our financial reports are out on our website now in the financial section. So all of the financial statements that related to budget are already posted. The PowerPoint will be posted tomorrow. Okay, so going over a little bit of the budgeting process. The budget process is very interactive and inclusive. It might have been sped up a little bit since I didn't start till March, but it was very interactive and inclusive this year. I speak to department heads, we discuss, and it's not necessarily always a formal meeting. Sometimes it's what we discuss in our staff meetings, or hey, we're looking at doing this down the road. So you kind of put those snippets in your folder and then circle back when it's time to do these kind of conversations. We have unit meetings. As a district, we are required to hold 2 public meetings. This is the first. The second meeting will be Thursday, September 14th, and that is where the board will then vote to approve the budget. Board members and employees obviously, make suggestions or they're considered for implementation, and then ultimately the board members approve the budget. There are constraints that you need to be made aware of while doing this. There are certain state and federal guidelines that have to be followed, legislative, U.S. Department of Education and Advanced Ed guidelines that all dictate and determine how you go through some of these processes. Some funds that are available from the state require local matches. The foundation program requires a local match of $9.3 million, and the capital purchase requires a local match of $470,000. So how does the state funding process work? It's based on student enrollment. That's why you'll see us talk about attendance is so important. Attendance now. The attendance, and you'll hear it, we like to do a lot of acronyms in the education world. You'll hear it called ADM, average daily membership. And so that is how our funding is based on the first 20 days, which the state chooses to start that count right after Labor Day and goes in through October. So what happens is based upon the attendance of the average daily membership of our students showing, that is how we receive our teacher unit funding. This year, can y'all see mine y'all's way? Do I need to go the other side? Our enrollment this year had about 8,938 students. I always love the .35. Somehow we got a .35 student in there. It's whatever formula that they process and use. So the difference in the quality education and funding, it really has an impact on your ADM. It also has an impact on your local. Districts that provide more local support per pupil, you end up having a lower student-teacher ratio because you can insert those local funds, and you're also allowed those enhanced opportunities. This is where I take my moment to let everyone know that athletics cannot be state funded or supported. So anything athletic related must come from local funds. Okay, so you'll hear me talk about the foundation program, and a lot of people, you know, you think foundation, you think of those support organizations that donate and give or whatever. So for state terminology, the foundation program is what the state sends us money for to fund our district. So it's a funding program to ensure educational opportunity in each school district. Every student in Alabama has an adequate education opportunity, requires a level of local tax support, that's so that you as a school district, you have that level of buy-in for what the state's bringing to you. And state funds are distributed in an equitable manner. The foundation program is the state funding mechanism for K-12. The program has a formula providing for teacher units, instructional support units, such as principals, assistant principals, etc. Although those instructional support units are not like 1-for-1, it's a percent. It's like maybe 0.7 of the average cost of a principal, or 0.45 of the average cost of assistant principal. So it's not 100% of what your individual person costs. OCE, that's other current expenses. There's a magic formula that when everyone can finally figure that out, we'll discuss that. That helps with support personnel, other current expenses. It's where you get your custodial, your maintenance, your aides, your CO. That's your other current expenses. And then you have your CIS funds. That's classroom instructional supply money. That is what we get for textbooks. It's what we call the teacher money, where each teacher this year got $1,000. It's for the local school version of professional development that they get money based on their teacher units, and technology. Additionally, once again, we're required to match 10 meals of local revenue with that state foundation program. So how does this work? Once again, the ADM, the 20-day head count. Here are our divisors. So when we talk about divisors, we're speaking of at K3 level, they really would like to see you keep it around 14 to 15 students per teacher. So those are what those divisors mean. This is the optimal number. Doesn't mean you can always achieve that, but that's the optimal number, and that's how your units are based. So this is a snapshot of what I get from the state. What I get from the state is a longer sheet. I break it up so it's easy to see. You'll see that from 23 to 24, we increased by 111 students. I'm gonna leave off the little points. What this did is it gave us 9 additional teacher units. Everything stayed the same with the principals and assistant principals, but the counselors, we did, somewhere in the mix at one of the schools, we lost half a unit of funding for counselors. So, that is what our units looked like. And so, we get this from this is what we're talking about, we'll start meeting in February, we should be able to have, a better idea of what our units are gonna be for the following year. It's based on ADM. This demonstrates your teacher units. So we can look at a Marbury Middle, their ADM is 452, they earn 22.85 teacher units. That is what the state is gonna send us money for teacher units. So this is your breakout, of each of our schools. And then there is a summary teacher type that based upon, it's not the required breakout, it's what you can do, about this many can go toward career tech, this many can go through to SPED teachers, this many are regular classroom teachers. It's not required, it's what your options could be. But you use your teacher units based upon your school needs. This is the lovely long sheet that's hard to read that I broke up. So here we go with this. So our foundation program, our salaries and benefits are around, that we are gonna receive money for around, 48 million. With other current expense, 13.3. These are the classroom instructional supplies that, support areas that we mentioned. You'll see here at this bottom, student growth. This is new this year. Last year, the legislature enacted that, because we get our money, the ADM count is in arrears, meaning the current ADM count that we're doing right now, that will end in October, that is for next year's money, not this year's. So what the legislature was seeing is those schools, certain areas that were really having growth, you were having struggle busing it because you're a year behind of getting it. So they implemented a student growth based upon if you hit a certain number of additional ADM, they plugged in a formula and they gave you student growth. This year for 2024 budget, we received student growth money, $764,000. Huge impact on us this year and how it's helping us for this year. So that was a good thing for us because it helped get us out of some of the other little areas where we had people. Our state money, we also get state money for school nurses, a small percent for a technology coordinator. Our transportation budget is broken out between our operation allocation and fleet renewal. And as we've discussed, the fleet renewal is, you can see, we're gonna receive $7,581 per bus. Buses age out after 10 years, you don't get that amount for those buses after age 10. And as we saw the cost of buses, that doesn't always do justice. Then the capital purchase money, this is the state money that gives us that we can use for deferred maintenance or a building project or whatever. We'll discuss, you'll see later on what we utilize ours for. That is also to be required to be matched. We have at-risk state money that we receive. And then our career tech operations and maintenance that we get from the state that has to go toward career tech in addition to whatever Perkins money they receive. And we have a local match that we also have to do with career tech.
Do you have ARI and Numeracy Act funding too? Is that in a different place?
We don't have all of our information yet.
So you get literacy funding?
We don't have, they revised some of our numbers for us, so that will be presented in the budget amendment when I add stuff back in there. So this is, our match with the Match Foundation Capital. Our total match money is $9.8 million of local tax dollars that we have to match. Okay, so how do our financial funds work? We have, you'll hear us talk about the general fund. The general fund is where our state money goes, our state appropriations, our tax money, anything like that goes in the general fund. And the special revenue fund, that is our local school public money, That is our CNP, our child nutrition program is housed in this, and any federal grants. Our capital projects fund, that is acquisition or construction of a major capital expenditure. Debt service, debt, you're paying for, payments of long-term debt. And any fiduciary fund, this is where our non-public local school activities sit. So these are the categories that when you see the financial picture, they're grouped in these columns, this is what these columns stand for. So our total proposed budget for the 2024 year, total revenues in general fund, 84 million, special revenue, 18 million, debt service, 4.1, capital projects, 500,000, and fiduciary, 509,000, totaling $107 million in proposed budgeted revenues. Total proposed budgeted expenditures, general fund, 89 million, special revenue, 17.7 million, debt service, 4 million, capital projects, 24.5 million, fiduciary fund, 467, for a total expenditures of 136 million. So let's look at the general fund. This is where the most of your salaries and benefits are. So in our general fund, the revenues are broken out. State, 64 million, federal, local, 19 million, and other. As you can see, the majority of our general fund is handled by state. So here's some detail in the federal. We receive, we cost share with the military on our ROTC instructors, so we get half or a nomination of that, of their salary. Then you'll see the impact aid. The impact aid will not stay in our general fund. The impact aid is a tax that we get that's basic, kind of like ad valorem. We get that because of our military students that attend our school. Federal government has a program, and because they are not always owning a home to contribute to the ad valorem, there's a whole cost percentage that's done, and so we receive funding for those military students that may be attending our school through impact aid. What we do as a district is we send that impact aid right to the local schools. So it's based upon if this school's house 3, we have a breakout, but it goes back to the school where that student is serving. Then you have our property tax. Property tax is budgeted at 9.3, sales and use tax at 9.5, and other at 306,000. Our miscellaneous is where we house our extracurricular transportation money that transportation department gets when the local schools do a field trip or athletic trip and they have to pay bus per mile. That sits over in this category. Indirect cost. Indirect cost is what we receive from federal programs for hosting or holding those federal programs, for a lack of better word. Providing office space, providing it's to help offset some of the non-tangible costs associated with having these federal programs. Okay, so we discussed the breakout of revenues very basic, state, federal, local, there you go. And the expenses. This is where it gets a little bit more detailed. We have 2 instructional categories, instructional services and instructional support. Obviously those are direct contact with the students. You have your operations and maintenance, auxiliary services. The auxiliary services are considered transportation and child nutrition program, just so you know for future reference. Then you have general admin. Those are your CO area that cover a centralized, not always housing the CO, but those individuals that may cover the district. You have your capital outlay, your debt services, and other. So here's our expenditure breakdown in the general fund. We have 62.8 million in instructional, 11 million in O&M, 6.7 in auxiliary, administrative 3.7, and other 4.4. For a total of 89 million. We're 70% instructional expenditures in general fund. That's how it should be. As a school district, the majority of our funds should go to those instructional services. in here, you can see a breakout of salaries and benefits. This is important because in your board packet, you also have the salary schedule that when you approve the budget on Thursday, you're incorporating that because it incorporates. So that we had several salary schedule changes this year, which greatly affected that 6.29 increase. First of all, the state gave a 2% cost of living adjustment effective October 1. So that's incorporated in that. Secondly, the state required any classified position, and when we say classified, we talk certified, that's teacher. Classified, me, aides, custodial, secretaries, those kind of classified positions. State required all classified positions, their minimum hourly rate has to be $15. It required massive changes to salary schedules, because most of ours were at 12 or 13. So it required a massive structure. Now, what we've been asked to do as CSFOs is to do an analysis to see how much that costs each district. Because what happened was the state, because those aren't units that you can count, like teacher units, that's real easy to see an adjustment. These $15 per hour adjustments, we can't really see if we got enough money for it because the state does an estimate of what we might need to cover it. So as a CSFO, we've been asked across the state to do an analysis to see if our other current expenses helped, was sufficient or not sufficient, so that we can report this back to the legislature to say, y'all got to figure out another way. If you're gonna if we're gonna have to drive this up, then you're gonna have to help find the money to help support that drive. So I'll be working on that in the near future. So those are some of the factors that caused, because when you look at this, you think, my goodness, we just jumped up $6.2 million and paid him what we did. Those are the factors that accommodate this kind of things. So in summary for the general fund, total revenues, 84 million, expenses, 89 million, showing, expenditures, revenue under expenditures by 4.7. So let's talk about that for just a second. So what it's basically showing is we're gonna spend more than we've got. The reason why is we've got some crossover funding going on right now. The state gave in August and September, gave us statewide safety grants, advanced technology plus money for capital, for deferred maintenance, insurance, etc. And, we got one more. We had several early grants that the state gave. What it did is, we got that revenue in August and September, but I haven't spent it yet. So all those expenditures are sitting over here. Our advanced technology money that we got, they're calling that the advanced technology plus now. That money alone was $4 million. We haven't spent it. So, I don't want to have a misconception that, oh my goodness, we're spending inappropriately, we've overspent at this time. This is about, we received the money in one fiscal year, but I'm gonna spend it in another. So that's what that looks like. Otherwise, I would have said we'd be dead even. So that's what we're looking at for our fund balance at the end of the year of 29 million. Before I go home, any questions about general fund? That's a lot to take in at one time. All right. Special revenues, these are our federal programs, and I've listed out the types of federal programs that we have. This also does include the ARP ESSER 3. So I've got us at 18 million in special revenue. With that breakout, obviously the majority of it is federal, and then the other revenues. Part of this other revenue in here, just like we had in general fund, other expense, relates to the child nutrition program pass-through. We are required by state law to pass through, and there's a formula sheet, about 2.3 million to our child nutrition program to help support the salaries and benefits for that program. So that's revenue, $2.3 million coming out of the general fund, our local taxes, into the child nutrition program. That's their revenue. So here's a breakout of the proposed revenue. This will fluctuate and this will change. You will see this when we do our budget amendment. There'll be some add-ons. There's other grant opportunities coming out, so this is very fluid. We did get some new grants this year. The Stronger Connections grant, that is a 3-year grant that totals about $350,000, but it's over 3 years. So you won't see the full amount budgeted in here. And then we have our typical Title I, Title II, Title IV, which I call it Title IV. It's the shot in the arm that you need because it's for well-rounded programs. It's not for your normal, typical instructional. So it's a little boost there. Your Perkins, which is your career tech, your special ed programs, and ESSER. Please note that this ESSER is not fully budgeted in your current budget amendment. I've got to wait until year end to see what I got left. What you're seeing right there in that budget is strictly salaries and benefits tied to the upcoming fiscal year. Okay, so with the ESSER 3, estimated now, without closing out year end, we're gonna have 3.6, 3.5, with the 20% reserve for learning loss, and then the state reserve is at 3.3, and we have to have this suspended by September 30th, 2024, in the following categories. Now, once again, here, right now, I've currently budgeted salaries and benefits. So here's what we've got in this ESSER 3. It's so important that we've got to pay attention to because we won't have this anymore. This is the last year. I managed to pull off all the nurses, so that was good. That was my goal. Get the nurses out, get as many teachers off of it as I can. I couldn't completely do it all. I've got teachers, aides, I have technology coach, 2 technology technicians, a psychometrist, a social worker, and the unfunded portion of pre-K teachers. Pre-K teachers, we get, there's an application process, you get money for pre-K, but it is not 100%. There's not a pre-K program that is ever funded 100%. We have to make a local match. And so to try to relieve our general fund, I put it on this because it's one more kick. Anything that I can shove on this right now, that's gonna hopefully help boost our general fund, going forward. Once again, here's our remaining balances to be budgeted. These are some of the categories that we're looking at. These are some of the current things that we do have, but doesn't mean that they'll go on the amendment next year. This is just some of the things that we have been purchasing. We've had a meeting, this week. It's just Tuesday. We had a meeting Monday, and we pretty much got it hammered out of what we're gonna do, and we're gonna work throughout the year. That as new funding opportunities come up, I pull those salaries off because we want to be able to get as much off as we can. Keep in mind that funding cliff is coming, and so there may be some hard decisions needed once that money goes away. Here's our expenditure breakdown. Instructional, we've got about 7.6. Operational, 498,000, auxiliary 8.3, your auxiliary right here, that's gonna be your child nutrition program. General admin, capital outlay, et cetera, for the 17.7 million. This is very enlightening to me to show you that in our special revenue fund, your federal programs and your CMP program are neck and neck. So in the end, we're looking at an ending fund balance of 2.2. That ending fund balance is basically your local schools, public money, and child nutrition program. Any questions about special revenue? Okay, debt service. We have debt service related to construction, infrastructure, and purchases, vehicles, equipment, etc. Okay, so bond debt. I showed you earlier about the state capital purchase money. It was about $2.6 million on that first slide. That is allowable to use to pay for bond debt or to pay for current construction, renovation, or deferred maintenance. Currently this year we had 2.6. Oh look, it's on the slide. We had 2.6. Was just proud 2.6 million. What we had to allocate that money for this year was bond payments for the 2015 through the 2021. We'll have a breakdown of that in a minute. We also had a 2008 old bond through the state and an additional old construction bond from 2010 with the state that all came out as 2.6. So the entire state capital funds of 2.6 that we receive from the state goes to pay bond debt. Along with the match that we have to make, it goes to pay bond debt. Our fleet renewal funds, as we've discussed, can be used to pay bus debt if you have a note or a loan, or a bond in our case, and or it can be used to buy new buses. Our fleet renewal money is totally paid. We received $818,000 this year, and it went 100% to bond debt. So what kind of debt do we have? Well, I discovered we have about 6 different types. I didn't know about 2 of them until I was doing my budget, and I was like, oh, hey, there you go. 2008, it's an old state related bond debt for capital repairs, and I don't know until I find out exactly what those capital repairs are. I'm not really sure, and I don't really know when that goes away. I get a thing from the state each year, year end or around that time, it tells me how much I owe. So that's what I know about that. We'll find out some more, and I will report back. The QSCAB, which is the construction bond, that was back in 2010. It was an old state bond for capital repairs. I do remember when this came out, and local schools could participate in this. Not everyone in the state did. Apparently we did. Apparently Talbot County participates anytime there's a bond opportunity. And so that's what we have done. And so, that's for capital repairs. We have a 2015 bond that we utilize for capital outlay and roof repairs. We have a 2017 bond that we utilize for bus purchase. We have a 2018 bond that we utilize for bus purchases, roof repairs, and additions to school. And then lastly, we have the 2021 bond that we did for bus purchases and the kindergarten
Ms.
school.
Poe, is it normal for all your capital funds to pay for bond debt?
No, ma'am. No,
Doesn't
ma'am.
sound normal.
It's not. You should utilize it. No, ma'am. You should never have this much bond debt.
So 17, 18, and 21, we took bond debt on school buses.
10 years. Which, what it does, okay, we talked about buses, we don't get fleet renewal money when buses age 10 years. After they hit like year 11, you don't get that money anymore. So as a school district, you should have a plan that every year you're buying, depending on your size, 1 to 2, 5 to 6, whatever. Apparently, that was not done over numerous years. I mean, this is not just to happen one day. This is a long-term, numerous years. So what happened is we got in a fix, apparently, and we had to buy a pack of buses at one time. So what happens is whatever we bought, however many number of buses we bought in 2017, and Neil can tell us a specific number, those will all roll off in 2028, which means we will no longer get credit for any of those buses and that, and it puts us back to if we need to buy more buses in 2028, which you start this perpetual cycle of just going on and on. And the 2020, you cannot finance a bus for more than 10 years.
We'll still be paying the bond in 2028, right?
The bond on the bus is only for 10 years.
Okay.
So like on the 2021, we'll talk about, on the 2021, let's talk about that. When it had bonds, it had the buses and the kindergarten school. Kindergarten school goes out to 2051. The buses do not, it's only 10 years, because you can't do it any more than that. Because you're obligating your state money toward it, you have to put up some kind of revenue, you're obligating your state money, you don't get that state money after 10 years, so you can't do that debt past 10 years.
And where's the problem with, I mean, what happened to us is back when proration was hitting, we couldn't afford buses at that point in time, and so instead of using fleet renewal for it, but the problem's gonna be now, like you just said, when these buses go off in 2027, most people have fleet renewal that they're gonna use to at least pay 60%, 70% of what the cost of that bus is, because we put it to bond debt, we're back at zero.
Right.
So we're gonna do that bond.
Or either pay up front, have a way.
So, here's, so here's what we're looking at, our capital purchase construction match from the general fund, we had to match, on that 2.6, we had to match that 470,000, that had to come from sales tax. Because I don't have enough ad valorem, because my whole ad valorem budget, of taxes went toward my foundation program. So if I don't, I'm required to have the match, it doesn't matter if it comes from ad valorem or sales tax, I gotta have that match. So if I don't have enough ad valorem, I had to pull from state taxes, and so we had to pull this from sales tax. So I had to pull this from sales tax. Our capital purchase construction, using the general fund for the 2021, I also had to pull that from sales tax, because I didn't have enough in all the us to cover the 2021 bond. So here's the breakdown. This is what we pay. 2015, and remember, please keep in mind, principal and interest will change each year as one goes up, one goes down. 2015, in the capital money out of that 2.6, we had to pay over $1 million in bond principal and interest. In 2018, we paid interest of $166,000. The state construction bond, $21,000. The 2008 state bond, we had to pay about 300 and something thousand. And then the 2021 interest and the fleet and the kindergarten school was over $1 million. On the 2021 bond, we're not paying in principal yet, and on the 2018 bond, we're not paying principal yet. We're only paying interest right now. Fleet renewal, we had to cover the 2017, 2018, and as much as we could of the 2021, like I said, fleet renewal wasn't enough, I had to go into sales tax. So here's our status with our debt. The 2015 bond has a remaining balance of $6.7 million, and that's total principal and interest. We use it out of our capital funds from the state and our sales tax. It has a liquidation date of 2028. Our 2017 bond has a balance of 1.1 million, liquidation date of 2026. Now, let me pause on that. We do have, with the extra mileage that we get for field trips, whatever, I do have enough to possibly pay that bond off. And we will look at that, at doing that, because what that does is it allows me not to.
Somebody aside to.
Yes, ma'am. So we will look at utilizing that, because what we should do is each year, every time we get those with athletics and field trips, they all have to pay that mileage. It should be stockpiled so that that money can go with the fleet renewal to get new buses. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort. So we'll start that process, hopefully. 2018 bond, 4.9 million, liquidation date 2032. And the 2021 bond, as we said, liquidation date, is a $28 million remaining, and its date liquidation of 2051. So here's how our debt service fund looks. Any questions on debt?
Rebecca should run after you.
Yeah.
I can go again, if that's helpful.
It's like Debbie Downer, yay. All right, capital projects. Right now, all we have going on right now, is the Prattville Kindergarten School. The balance on the books is the 24 million that you see. That's the bond money. As we get the expenses sent into us from the architect, then, and the construction, we pay it out. So you're gonna see this deeply due to payments. hoping to, by the end of the year, maybe to have a little bit of a fund balance in this. If nothing else pops up, because to be quite honest, if we have a major HVAC break, we're in trouble. So, hoping that we get this paid and have a little cushion year end of 2024. Expendable, we talked about this is non-public local school activity. This is where your, PTAs maybe, or what do we call them now? PTOs, PTAs. Okay. It could be any, it could be unbooked boosters, but it could be those areas. Okay, so let's talk about our local revenues and, how that budget looked. So it sounds really good. I've got $19.6 million budgeted. However, I'm required a lot of match. I'm required the $9.3 million from state foundation. I'm required, and this local revenue, this is ad valorem, sales tax. This is business privilege tax. This is anything we get related to all of that. We have the state and capital match. We have the CMP pass-through of $2.3 million. You saw all the bond debt in the previous slides. That's all tied to that number. Also, as we've discussed earlier, we have to match pre-K. We have to match special ed with maintenance of effort. There's a whole formula sheet that the state tells me what I have to use, what has to come out of local money. We have to match career tech with local money based upon their student head count per teacher, which it doubles, meaning I could be a nursing student and a welding student, and that teacher, the nursing teacher, gets a portion for me, and the welding instructor gets a portion for me. It's not just one student career tech, it's duplicated. We're required to match that. Okay, so what are our local revenues and what are these uses? Well, I gave y'all accounting numbers, so that really doesn't matter. This first one is for transfers to local schools. We send money to the local schools to assist with the local travel, to assist with some professional development. Basically, and we've changed it up a little bit this year. Used to, we would cut checks back and forth. And so I said, let's stop doing that. And we would be very specific. This pot has to go in this activity at your school, this pot. We're not doing that anymore. We're sending the money, principals put the pot of money where it needs to go, but when it runs out and you have that additional need, that's on you. So I want the schools to decide where that money, we've got a percent, we've got a whole spreadsheet based on size and stuff, how much you get. But we're no longer at a CO level gonna determine what that local school does with it. It's for them to do as they need to do to service their school. This one is a 0.5-cent sales tax that we receive. This money goes toward maintenance and utilities for the district. That's all that money goes for. Because we pay all the utilities district-wide. This 1-cent sales tax, this is where all athletic board paid supplements live. That's around $800,000. This is where we do anything extra, like professional development, maintenance vehicles, equipment that we have to support and fix, CMP pass-through, SPED, maintenance of effort. Our ad valorem, we budgeted at 9.3, 100% of that goes to the state foundation match. There's no extra left in that. So as you can see, our local revenues are pretty much obligated. So let's talk about the challenges that we're gonna have going forward. Student enrollment decreasing has a devastating effect on the stability of the district, because you don't know from year to year which way it's gonna swing and what that funding curve's gonna look like. Federal funding, we use federal funding to support teacher units in Otagoville and Billingsley due to the lack of earned units because they're a K-12. federal revenues that we support our classroom are decreasing because of average daily membership decreasing. Our current funding is not adequate to meet pre-K, at-risk programs, or to even do basic deferred maintenance. We're having to utilize teacher units to make sure that each school has a full assistant principal and counselor. What it means is we flex our units. If they have 20 teachers, we may say you can have 19, and we're going to use one of your teacher units to fund your assistant principal, because you don't earn one. Not every school earns an assistant principal, and not every school earns a full counselor. Sometimes you only get that half unit, so you have to use a teacher unit to help offset those costs. This is where that student growth money saved us this year. And all of the additional units. For instance, let's say Prattville High School, they have 4 assistant principals, it's a 7A school, they only earn 3.5. They have 4 counselors, they only earn 3. So we're having to figure out ways to fund that. That's not just at that school, that's every school in our district has that. On some level, every school, we're having to flex a unit to help pay for a counselor and assistant principal.
Which makes the student teacher ratio higher.
But it's the way that I have to juggle it to adequately handle salaries and benefits. We're seeing an increase in special education population, and it does not equate to the funds that we receive from the state at all, or federal, and especially the federal. We're seeing a decrease, which I don't understand, seeing a decrease in federal funds each year from special ed, but I've seen an influx of special ed population. This is not just in Autauga County, this is statewide. We're talking about this. Like, what is going on? Because the funding is decreasing, the demand is increasing, and then that's a local area that you're having to handle yourself. We're gonna have to figure out how to maintain some of these summer programs that we're now required to. You'd mentioned earlier about the summer literacy and the numeracy acts. Okay. So, there's something called early years assessment. We still haven't been fully funded for that. And then they're changing the numbers a little bit on the literacy, and the numeracy, which is one of those. Oh, no. Our ARI, we have accelerated reading coaches. By the way, you can only have those reading coaches in a school that has a K3. Your 4, 5, 6, you don't get funded for those reading coaches. I guess we decided that it needs to after that. I don't know, but it's only one. And you only get $80,000 for that one teacher. Well, that's not gonna cover salaries and benefits. So you have to support the rest locally, or you have to, once again, take a teacher unit to help support that. For 3 years, our custodial supplies in this district has been paid utilizing the ESSER funds. After 2024, we will have to start funding all custodial supplies again. That's local money. And that sounds so basic, but if you think about, we support the custodial supplies for the entire school district, that's costly. Instructional materials and software will have to be reviewed and possibly reduced if necessary due to the ESSER funds. We do have some information that we can do some software renewals and extend to 4 years after, so 2028. Then it would be after 2028, we have to figure out how we're gonna handle purchasing these instructional programs needed for assessment and testing, and virtual, and all component areas. ACT prep, I mean, it's not limited to just one area. Our current technology infrastructure needs to be constantly updated to maintain adequate support for staff and students. Okay, so we talked about a virtual school earlier. You're talking about devices, you're talking about switches, you're talking about access points, you're talking about rewriting for the wiring. So, and that's just not in that, because it's maybe a new program. Think about our older schools and how fast technology evolves, and that you've got to be able to do that. We have a small support staff for maintenance and technology, for a district of our size, thus requiring